Watching dollar battle is so boring. I want to watch Hansen battle Idongmu. Two assassins fighting each other would be pretty fun. Tang Zhenliu sat on his sofa rewatching the video of Idongmu and Dollar's final battle. A battle between two assassins would be too fatal, Lin Feng said quietly. That's why it would be exciting. But those two don't have a grudge with each other, so the chance of them fighting would be pretty low. It is a shame, though. Tang Zhenliu felt remorseful. The two people that Tang Zhenliu spoke about were in the shelter, 1 meter apart. I am going to hunt a red-scaled dragon. Do you want to come? Idongmu looked at Hansen and asked. That is too dangerous. Hansen blinked. The red-scaled dragon that Idongmu mentioned was a powerful sacred blood creature. Even with the powers they both possessed, it would be an incredibly difficult fight. It is dangerous, that is why I am going. Idongmu turned to leave as he spoke. Then let's go. Hansen knew that Idongmu's spirit had been crushed. He didn't say much. He just followed Idongmu to the slopes of a particularly snowy mountain. Idongmu killed the creatures along the way in one hit. Seeing him angry like that, Hansen began to believe it may have been better if he had thrown the match and lost. But Idongmu was really powerful, and if it wasn't for Hansen's constant practice of wind strike with him, he most likely would not have been able to block the skill. The wind didn't feel entirely clean, and it made Hansen feel a little ashamed. Before long, they both reached the cap of the mountain where the red-scaled dragon was said to reside. From afar, they saw a creature that looked like a T-Rex on the slopes of the mountain, curled up and sleeping in the snow. Because it had not yet been given a name, it was Idongmu who called it red-scaled dragon. According to him, the power and speed of the creature were incredibly high, and even with sacred blood weaponry, its scales would be extremely difficult to penetrate. He had come here twice before attempting to kill it, but had failed both times. But today, Idongmu had clearly resolved not to be beaten again. He was going to kill it, no matter what it took. Idongmu summoned his beast soul daggers and ran towards the red-scaled dragon. He was shouting all the way, and it gave Hansen a cold sweat. Geez, you are an assassin. What is wrong with you, running in with a battle cry like some brutish warrior? Hansen felt deflated, but still, he summoned his silver ice snake king sword and ancient mascot sword and ran to the other side of the red-scaled dragon, which was now rising from its slumber. Hansen and Idongmu's weapons were slashing the red-scaled dragon with ardent ferocity, but their strikes only left shallow scratches in the dragon's scales. The creature was unharmed. The red-scaled dragon was like a mechanical truck that kept sprinting up and down the slopes of that mountain. It was so fast and fierce that Idongmu and Hansen could only dodge again and again, unable to get in hits from the front. You go draw its attention. Idongmu barked the order at Hansen before running behind the red-scaled dragon. Why don't you draw its attention? Hansen felt frustrated, but he still waved his two blades to hack at the red-scaled dragon's legs. He managed to obtain the red-scaled dragon's attention, and with a capped aggro, was promptly chased all over the mountainside. Idongmu found the perfect opening and managed to leap onto its head from behind. He repeatedly stabbed the creature in its neck, the only spot that wasn't plated in thick scales. Roar! The red-scaled dragon thundered its agony. It shook its head and threw Idongmu down into the snow. Then the red scales of the dragon burst into flames. As they seared in fire, the scales turned to crystal. Holy smokes, it's turning berserk. Run, Hansen yelled, and then started running away. Although Idongmu's mood was foul, he wasn't stupid. He joined Hansen and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. But the red-scaled dragon was furious. It chased them over the mountains and valleys for over 100 miles before they finally lost the monster on their heels. Idongmu and Hansen felt as if their legs were ready to snap by the time they outran their pursuer. Gasping in unison, they collapsed to the ground for respite. After a while, Idongmu said, "You are going to attack the royal shelter." "Yes." Hansen looked at Idongmu and then continued, "You want to join me. Be careful of Kai Ziyuan." After Idongmu issued his warning, he got up and turned to leave. Hansen remained sitting in the snow. He shook his head and said, "I don't know if Kai Ziyuan convinced Lai Zinglunand and Philip to join me yet, but I have to take down that royal shelter as soon as I possibly can." Hansen remained unconcerned about Kai Ziyuan. With the silver fox around him most of the time, he knew no evolver could cause him great harm, no one across the ice fields, at least. Before the terrifying power of the silver fox, all conspiracies would be useless against him. Hansen then got up but noticed something moving in the snow up ahead. He stayed as still as he could, trying to figure out what he had just seen. He saw something move around in the snow, and after a while, a big white turtle came out from under the powdery snow. The turtle was pretty large. After it emerged from the snow, it poked its head about to look around. It seemed to be searching for something. Han-sen watched the turtle from a good distance, but he could see where it had come from. Behind it there was an ice cave that appeared to have been flooded. The surface of the water was mostly ice, and it was dressed in thick snow, so it took a decent pair of eyes to see it. The big turtle wasn't looking for Han-sen, and after it walked around in a few circles, it returned to the cave it had emerged from. It then dipped its head into the water. Whether it was drinking or not remained to be seen. A while later, the turtle pulled its head back and simply looked into the ice cave. Han-sen thought it was a strange sight, so he sat back down and continued his observation in greater comfort. After some time had passed, another turtle came out of the water in the cave. But compared to the first turtle, this turtle was much smaller. It was like a small rice bowl. After this small turtle exited the water, many more followed. At final count, 9 turtles came out of the water of the ice cave. Han-sen, who was hiding in the snow, opened his eyes wide and said, "These cannot be the babies of the big turtle, right?" Han-sen was aware that it was a difficult task for creatures to breed. He had only ever seen a golden growler, an old turtle, and an obsidian dragon give birth, and their litters were incredibly small, usually singular. Yet this big turtle had 8 baby turtles behind it. If they were its children, those numbers were crazy. After the 8 turtles came out to join the big turtle led them down to a wide basin below the snow-cloaked mountain. Watching the trail of turtles take off on their little adventure, Han-sen could not help but admire them and think they were rather cute. Han-sen did not know the details of the snow turtles he had just seen and could not tell what tier of monster they could be considered. So, all he did was hide in the snow and watch. After the big turtle reached the basin below the mountain, it used its claws to dig into the snow. Han-sen watched as it slowly unearthed red mushrooms. Then, when the smaller turtles arrived, they each happily started eating their bounty of food. Han-sen was amazed. Seeing a creature bring its children to eat was an incredibly rare sight, one that few people would ever be given the honor of seeing. When the snow turtles began to dig into their food, the screech of a bird came out of the sky. A golden bird dropped into view. As if it had been searching for the turtles, it came down at an extremely high speed with its talons raised and ready to snatch them. Before the threatening bird reached them, the big snow turtle shot a beam of frost towards it. In the next second, the bird turned into a block of ice. From the height it fell, it hit the ground hard and shattered into nothing but bits and pieces. Holy smokes, it's a super creature. Han-sen was staring at the turtle with wide eyes. This was the first time Han-sen had ever seen such a large amount of super creature babies all in one place. There were 8 of them, and now Han-sen was afraid to even breathe. The last thing he wanted was for the snow turtle to take notice of his presence. The silver fox was frighteningly powerful, even as a baby. But here, there were 8 super creature children and their mother. Seeing the golden bird shatter into crumbs of ice, Han-sen felt a shiver run down his spine. Being afraid to breathe, he gave the task over to his cells so he could continue watching the 9 turtles eat. After the small turtles ate the red mushrooms, the bodies of the creatures started to glow red. At first, the turtles were as white as the snow itself. But now, they looked like blood turtles. The small turtles were really young, as their size suggested. Thus, they couldn't eat much, and after eating a mushroom about the size of a man's fist, they were full. But the big turtle was really hungry, and it ate about 10 mushrooms before it turned red. It looked like the turtles were all satisfied, and when they were, the big turtle buried the red mushrooms beneath the snow again. Then it led the small turtles back to the ice cave where they had first emerged. Han-sen waited for a while longer, and when he confirmed there was no more movement, he ran to the area where the snow turtles had eaten and dug his way down to the red, fist-sized mushrooms. They seemed like mushrooms you would cook. They were the size of a fist, and they glistened with a sparkling clarity. They also emanated a lovely smell, and Han-sen wagered they would taste pretty good. Han-sen used to follow a certain botanist, and through him, he learned many of the tips and tricks one could use to identify plants, herbs, and mushrooms. He looked at the red mushrooms and noticed there were only 3 left. The rest had already been eaten by the turtles, but judging from the way they looked, they didn't seem poisonous. There were many strange plants back at the shelter that Han-sen wouldn't dare eat. Han-sen pulled out a bag and picked a single mushroom to put inside it. He didn't take any more, but he prepared to take the mushroom with him, thinking it might become useful. He covered the others with snow once again and summoned his golden growler. He collected and reassembled the body of the shattered bird and placed it upon the golden growler. It looked like a sacred blood creature, and even if it was only a mutant, Han-sen didn't want to waste it. This was free stuff that he wasn't going to pass up. Back inside the Crystal Palace, Han-sen asked Zero to cook the golden bird's meat. Then, he heard the announcement, Sacred Blood Golden Wing Bird Flesh has been consumed. Sacred Geno Points obtained is 0. Because he ate so little, he was unable to increase his Sacred Geno Point total. But that still made Han Sen quite happy. Although he had failed to hunt the red scale dragon, the free collection of a sacred blood golden wing bird made up for it. He ate a whole meal of the sacred blood golden wing bird, but his point total did not increase. There was still a lot of meat left, however, so Han Sen prepared it and got ready to eat it all slowly. The bird wasn't that big, after all, so he figured he would be able to eat it all within 10 days. Back in the Alliance, Han Sen found a way he could contact Professor Sun Manhua. Although Professor Sun had spent his entire life in the First God's Sanctuary, he had yielded incredible results for the world of botany, and this was something few would understand. Han Sen gave him the details of the red mushroom he had collected and told him about the turtles. He wanted the professor to find out whether or not the mushrooms possessed any beneficial traits that would apply to him. The shelter's plants have great power. They should be quite effective on humans, but the bodies of humans are very different. It is difficult to say whether the effects will benefit you or ail you. After that, Professor Sun stopped. He hesitated for a while, but then began talking to Han Sen again. In the Third God's Sanctuary, there are some amazing plants that can improve your genes. But still, humans have yet to fully uncover which are beneficial and which are harmful. If humans cannot determine the effects a plant will impart, how can we find out which ones can improve a human's genes? I won't answer this question, but after you visit the Third God's Sanctuary, you will understand. Professor Sun seemed to dodge Han Sen's question, and he quickly changed the subject. Han Sen, after my analysis, I have come to the conclusion that the red mushroom you discovered is a provision that can increase one's vitality. It's not the most in-depth research result, but I would suggest that you try it out yourself. Eat a little bit and see what happens. You don't think there'll be any problems with it, do you? Han Sen felt a little strange, for he would feel bad eating this in the shelter. Just eat a little bit, no more than 10 grams of the stuff. But be prepared. If something does go wrong and it doesn't sit well in your stomach, make sure you have an alchemical concoction to help flush it out. But from what I can see, it should not be harmful. If it really is something that can strengthen your body, then go for it. Just don't eat too much, lest it bring you harm. I'll think about it. Han Sen did not dare to say he would indeed try eating it. It's a shame I don't know anyone out on the ice field. If I did, I could have someone accompany you and help test it out, Professor Sun said in a remorseful tone of voice. But what Professor Sun had just said gave Han Sen an idea. If he did not want to take the risk of eating it, why not find someone else to do it for him? That Zhu Ting has deadly perfume. It should be no problem for a toxic man like that to try it out. I'll get him to give it a go, Han Sen thought, deciding Zhu Ting would be his guinea pig. Zhu Ting had to be the tester, for if it was someone closer with Han Sen and something went wrong, Han Sen couldn't handle the responsibility of bringing harm to his friends. Besides, Zhu Ting was known to eat poison like he had a sweet tooth for the stuff, so there was no one more qualified to try out the red mushroom than him. Anyway, he prepared a few different dishes and invited Zhu Ting over for dinner. Come, let's drink together this night. Han Sen dragged Zhu Ting over to sit down, speaking with overbearing friendliness. Zhu Ting looked at Han Sen with an extremely puzzled expression, thinking, why would this guy invite me over for dinner? He must be conspiring against me or something. Is the food poisoned? Does he want to poison me? Is that it? No way, he's not that stupid. Surely, he knows I have deadly perfume and I am immune to poison. He must have dropped his brain somewhere if he has thought to poison me. Han Sen was acting all nice, dishing Zhu Ting as much food as he could, topping up his drink after every swig. Brother Zhu, have you gotten used to living out here on the ice field? If you are having issues, feel free to confide in me. I may not be able to help you with big things, but if it's something relatively small, I'll do what I can to make your life here all the more comfortable. Zhu Ting then retreated back into his mind and said to himself, something here is not right. This guy must be buttering me up because he needs me for something. There is no way he is being this nice out of the kindness of his heart. Zhu Ting rolled his eyes and then boisterously thought, fine, if you have something you want to ask of me, and you're even going so far as to call me brother, I am going to be the boss. Brother Han, if there is something you want, just tell me. I dug up some mushrooms out on the ice field. I would like you try some out and tell me whether or not they are poisonous. I know you have deadly perfume, which makes you immune. You are only going to give me 10,000 for doing something as dangerous as that. Zhu Ting peered at Han Sen with an expression that painted him as a bona fide cheap bastard. Oh no. Han Sen slapped his lap. Oh no what? Zhu Ting looked spooked. Why didn't you say something earlier? I thought you had already agreed, and see, I have already served you the food. Han Sen was wearing his innocent face. You bastard. Zhu Ting's face started turning green. Zhu Ting was not afraid of being poisoned, it was just that Han Sen was toxic enough himself. Brother Zhu, don't you worry. Your deadly perfume is the best. There is no need for you to fear those little mushrooms. Even if they are poisonous, there is no way they can poison you. The Poison King, yes. Han Sen did his best to comfort him. I suppose, Zhu Ting said cockily, but then he changed his face and said, but this is different. I know I am good, but good or bad, 10,000 is not enough. No problem. I am willing to raise the monetary offering for this kind service of yours to a whopping 20,000. Han Sen said with a smile. Something is wrong. What is it? Is it the poison? Don't worry, I have medicine prepared. Quickly, shove this down your throat and I'll get you on your way to the detox center so they can rinse out your bowels. Brother Zhu, don't look at me like that. I thought your deadly perfume rendered you immune to fatal poisons. Who knew? Before Han Sen could finish his sentence, Zhu Ting started to tear the clothes from his body. Much to his surprise, a muscular body was revealed beneath. Geez, what are you doing? Han Sen reached out his hands to ward off Zhu Ting from coming any closer. Zhu Ting's eyes were red with lust, and as he advanced on Han Sen, he tried to get on top of him to rip his clothes off. Zhu Ting tried to kiss him with the ferocity of a horny bear. I want. Zhu Ting moaned and groaned in between his mumbling. Holy smokes, those mushrooms can't be aphrodisiacs, can they? Han Sen pushed Zhu Ting away from him and dashed out of the room. He closed the door on his lusty aggressor and locked it tight. Zhu Ting hammered the stone door like a madman. Brother Zhu, hold on. I'm going to get you a woman. Han Sen was glad that the shelter's doors were made of stone. Due to the strength needed to break down such a door, there was no way Zhu Ting would be able to escape. I can't take it anymore. Zhu Ting screamed from behind his stone ward. Hold on. Use your hand first, while I go search for a woman in the meantime. After walking around Black God's shelter for some time, Han Sen came across an impoverished woman who was willing to sell her body to make ends meet. On a horse, she returned with Han Sen. Brother Zhu, I have brought a woman to take care of all your needs. As Han Sen opened the door, he saw Zhu Ting sprawled out across the floor with a few shreds of cloth over his body. Crumpled balls of tissue lay scattered around the room. Han Sen, are you even a human being? I cannot believe you fed me horny pills. Zhu Ting was furious, and he ran towards Han Sen, trying to grab him by the neck. Han Sen dodged the incoming assault and tried to reason with him, saying, Brother Zhu, see, I have brought you a woman. But who would have guessed you'd finish up that quickly, eh? Quick, my ass. You were out there for 2 hours, and here I was, all alone and almost bleeding. And besides, what kind of woman did you even bring me? This fat tramp looks to weigh 200 kilograms. Is it a mutant creature? Zhu Ting yelled angrily at Han Sen. A woman with a little booty is good, you'll never understand. Give me my money. Han Sen reached into his pockets and presented Zhu Ting with a few $1,000 bills. Regretting what he had subjected Zhu Ting to, he said, I know I was only supposed to give you 20,000, but take 30. Consider it my way of apologizing and trying to make up for what I just put you through. No one wants your pity money. If you want to give me something, give me your medicine. Give me more of your red medicine. Why? What do you want it for? Han Sen opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhu Ting. That is none of your business. You owe me, don't you? Consider this retribution, Zhu Ting said, with a scolding temperament. Zhu Ting then told Han Sen that the mushroom worked not only to heighten your desire for sexual activity, but to considerably strengthen your kidneys as well. The effects were powerful that even now, his kidneys were really warm. It was as if he had 2 hot water bottles inside him. He was brimming with so much energy that, even after playing with himself for so long, he was yet to feel tired. This stuff really is the good stuff. The red mushroom had incredible effects, and if he was to consume an entire mushroom, Han Sen wondered if he might be able to finish his study of Jade Sun Force. But the most blatant side effect of the mushroom was quite tempting for Han Sen. If he got Jai Yanran to eat it, he pondered what might happen. Still, he wasn't able to bring the red mushroom out of the shelter, and Jai Yanran was nowhere near the ice field. In the end, Han Sen did not give the last bit of red mushroom to Zhu Ting. The sexual effects of the thing were too scary. It was so powerful that not even deadly perfume could withstand it. Han Sen was worried Zhu Ting might use the red mushroom for an ill purpose, so he refused to hand it over. Zhu Ting left angrily. He collected the 30,000 and cursed Han Sen numerous times before leaving. Han Sen then returned to his room and locked his door. He looked at the last piece of mushroom in his hand. He looked and looked until at last, he put it in his mouth. He chewed it a bit, and soon the pleasant feel of it in his teeth became a warmth in his belly. His kidney was already quite warm, and now it was even warmer. It was as if he had 2 little stoves inside him, generating an endless supply of energy. At the same time, Han Sen felt the entirety of his body heat up. What was below the belt could hold up the sky. He was starting to feel horny, and he was overwhelmed with the desire to rip his clothes off. Han-sen gritted his teeth and held off on that feeling, casting Jade Sun Force as he did. He wanted to use Jade Sun Force to absorb the power of the red mushroom. As he did this, someone knocked on the door. From behind it, a woman's voice called out to him. Han-sen was shocked as a burning sensation overwhelmed his insides. His kidneys were sizzling with heat, and it felt as if they had become two fireballs ricocheting around his body. Han-sen did not feel good. Damn it, why are you coming here at this time? Han-sen did not have the willpower necessary to suppress the riot that was going on inside him. Han-sen was in a trance. He couldn't hear who it was outside or what the feminine voice was talking about. But regardless, he did not need to listen because Han-sen could guess who it was. Visitors to his room were infrequent, as it was something few would dare to do. It was only on the odd occasion that young Manly would come to visit him, when there were important matters to discuss. Aside from her, there was no one else. Thinking about young Manly's thick, white legs, Han-sen felt his brain start to implode. He couldn't take his mind off those delicious legs, and he wanted nothing more than to kick the door down and hop onto her. He used everything he had to suppress his lust and double-timed it on the Jade Sun Force. He was going to do his best to wait this desire out. If he was able to avoid seeing her, then Han-sen was of firm faith that he could beat this lusty force that was consuming him. But Han-sen's heart suffered a shock quite quickly when he heard the door open. Holy smokes, young Manly, I thought you were a reserved person. What is going on with you today? Han-sen's mind was scrambled like an egg, and his heart was ablaze. He heard the footsteps of a woman tread across his room. Although Han-sen was forcing his eyes closed, when he heard her voice, the resolve of his will crumbled to the machinations of lust. The image of a woman's beautiful naked body was omnipresent, layered across all of his thoughts. As he tried to suppress the carnal desires, his face started turning red. Then his nose began bleeding. The woman was walking closer and closer to Han-sen, which almost made him scream out and call for aid. The effects of the red mushroom were too powerful. Zhu Ting was known to possess a strong will, but even he was eager to jump on top of a man for release. Given that, you might imagine the power of this mushroom. Han-sen did not dare open his mouth or eyes. He was afraid that if he started talking, or even opened his eyes to look, his mind would forfeit all control to the lust that was attempting to conquer his mind. Leave. Although I enjoy sleeping with women, I will only do it with the woman I love. I'm not entirely against consuming pills for added excitement, but shouldn't that be a woman's job? How can I eat them and suddenly be all lusty? Leave. Leave. Get out of here. Get out of here, young Manly. Han-sen's heart was encouraging itself to not give in, despite the rebellion of his mind. But the woman continued to approach Han-sen, having seemed to discover that something was not quite right with Han-sen's behavior. She walked in front of Han-sen, trying to get a look at him. The woman was drawing extremely near, and Han-sen could smell her. It was like his entire body was on fire and his nose was gushing like a fountain. Han-sen was fighting the desire to open his eyes, and he bit down on his teeth and kept them shut. He bit on his own tongue until it bled, hoping the addition of pain might help him beat back the lusts. Blood dripped from his lips. The woman furrowed her brow, believing something had gone wrong with Han-sen's training. She suddenly thought that her uninvited entry was the catalyst for this apparent mishap of practice. The woman bent over and reached out her hand to feel for Han-sen's pulse on his neck. She seemed eager to find out what had happened to Han-sen. But when her delicate fingers touched Han-sen's neck, the floodgates of his mind were lost. It felt as if the fingers were bringing a fire, and it made Han-sen open his eyes. A beautiful woman stood before him, and her body was incredibly refined. Her height was almost the same as Han-sen. She was wearing a tight white battlesuit. The curvatures of her thick, long legs, bubble butt, and big boobies were highlighted in the suit, perfectly sculptured, angled and curved to catch the attention of everyone, and get their hearts racing. Her delicate face was as cold as it was elegant. It was the face of someone who was difficult to get close with. The woman was directly in front of Han-sen, and her lips opened as if to say something. But at this time, Han-sen couldn't hear a single thing. Although this woman did not look like young Manly, she was even more attractive, with a body and personality Han-sen favored even more. Han-sen lost all self-control. An aura of utter evil shone in Han-sen's eyes. He reached out his hands and tried to grab the woman. The distance was great enough that she was able to take a graceful step back to avoid his lecherous hands. The woman's face did not change. She just looked at Han-sen with the strangest of stares. But over the next second, her face warped. She could not believe Han-sen was coming after her. The woman thought it would be impossible for him to do so, but he did. It wasn't long before her back was against a wall, and there was nowhere else for her to go. Han-sen blocked her every exit, and it was impossible for her to run away now. The woman became incredibly angry in her shock. She reached her hand out to hit Hansen, but then quickly refrained. She knew she had disturbed his training and caused this predicament. Right now, his eyes were blood red, which more than suggested something was wrong. She pulled back her fist. As soon as she hesitated, Hansen grabbed onto the woman's battlesuit. Within moments, the battlesuit that had been designed to withstand bullets was ripped apart by Hansen's lust-fueled hands. Her succulent pair of big white breasts were now on full display in front of him. Hansen threw himself onto the woman and pushed her against the wall. One hand was clutched one of her giant boobs, which one hand could never hope to hold in its entirety, and his other hand reached down to squeeze her firm, bubbly butt. Hansen then brought down his lips to seal her own. The woman opened her eyes wide, and her body froze. Within just a few seconds, her curvy, voluptuous body had been grabbed and touched all over by Hansen. A second later, her eyes were filled with the chaos fire of hatred, and she looked at Hansen a murderous eye. It was as if her entire body had entered berserk mode. Her body seemed to emit a purple light, and she took on the shape of a fairy. A walloping knee drilled its way into Hansen's stomach, which sent the horny baboon flying across the room. Then the woman jumped up and struck Hansen with her battle axe-like legs while he was still airborne. Before he could even hit the ground, she kicked him sideways again. Pang, pang, pang. The beautiful legs had become frightening weapons that struck Hansen around 30 times. And for the entire time he was beaten up, right, left, and even down, Hansen did not touch the ground. Her exposed breasts jumped and jiggled with every kick. The woman knew that there was something wrong with Hansen, however, which helped to calm her down somewhat. So, she used her hands to try to conceal her wobbling, jelly breasts. The purple light that was being emitted from the woman's body started to fade. Although she was truly mad, she still managed to limit how much power she exerted on her horny aggressor. If she hadn't, with the power of someone who had unlocked her first gene lock, one kick would have been enough to end Hansen. It was clear to her that something was wrong with Hansen. So, despite her rage, she managed to put a cap on the damage she dealt him, especially with the purple light, which she pushed into Hansen's body. This purple light would attempt to course its way through his body and clear his mind from any encroaching force. Although Hansen's body was suffering, he was able to feel a strange but gentle sensation flow throughout his insides. It seemed to help subdue and eliminate the effects of the red mushroom he had consumed. Clarity began returning to his mind, and when it had done so in a sufficient amount, he was able to close his eyes and focus on recasting Jade Sun Force. He then started to absorb the purple light and the red mushroom into his kidney. When these two distinct forces entered his kidneys, they made the organs glow in their two representative colors. His kidneys then started to glow like red, purple, and gold nuggets. This bounty of power was going all around his body. Hansen felt tremendous joy in his heart. Having both of these powers consume and reinvigorate him, he felt as if his Jade Sun Force was getting better and better. The process was quick and free from trouble, and it seemed that it would all be over soon. The woman summoned Beast Soul armor to cover her body and went to sit on a chair. She had a curious, complicated look on her face as she watched Hansen, in between her blushing. I should have killed you. The woman thought about the shameful scene and terrible groping she had been subjected to, and she looked at Hansen with disgust. Queen had been traveling through the ice field, and she had come to learn that Hansen was living in the area from Huangfu Pinking. So she thought to give him a visit and ask him something. Queen did not want to disturb or affect anyone else, so she came here alone during the night. With her skills of espionage, she knew she would not be discovered on her way there, but this was the last thing she had expected to happen. When she thought about her body being felt all over by a man like Hansen, she wanted to slap him to death. But she was also conflicted with the knowledge that it was her disturbance that most likely prompted his out-of-character misdeeds. She didn't blame Hansen, but she again thought about how her body, which had never been touched by another man before, had been so vigorously fondled by someone in such a manner. She blushed deeply and gnawed at her teeth in uncertainty until she almost drew blood. But Queen had something else nibbling at the back of her mind. With her talents, she knew she should have fended Hansen off and kept him away. But when she moved and used Heavenly Go, Hansen was able to follow each step and block her way. She was the one who taught Hansen Heavenly Go, but her calculations of his progress with the skill were obviously incorrect and had led to this grievous mistake. Her mind and body were not prepared, which was why she had been pushed to the wall. Now that his kidney had absorbed the purple light, things seemed different. He believed that if he ate the red mushroom again, the horniness would not affect him. To test this out, all he would have to do was collect the final mushroom and eat it, then practice the Jade Sun Force one last time to finish its training. Han-sen opened his eyes and saw Queen in front of him, staring at him coldly. The scene and all its wretched sexual tension came rushing back to him. Imagining his prior grab of her boobies, he couldn't help but stare at her chest. Excellent. They were excellent. Han-sen had laid eyes on many beautiful girls in his time, but this was the only stunner that was as powerful as he was. And her pair of boobs were in no way inferior to those possessed by Hyungfu Pinking. Everything about her was perfect, pretty much. If you have a death wish, then by all means, continue to stare. Queen coldly looked at Han-sen. Her face did not display emotion, but anger continued to boil in her heart. If Han-sen's behavior had not been triggered by her intrusion, she would have slapped him to death by now. I am sorry, but this is my room. You are the one who came in uninvited, you cannot blame me. Han-sen was coughing when he said this. He saw the woman continue to peer at him, and it looked as if she wanted to kill him. His heart was stricken with a chill, so he quickly shuffled along the proceedings and asked, "Who are you, anyway? And why have you come here?" Han-sen had never seen Queen's face before, and the lusty thoughts from earlier had messed up his head. Queen told him. Han-sen was flabbergasted. He said, "It's you. Why are you here?" Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.